What's good, YouTube? Just a casual nerd here, back again with another video, and today we're going to talk about Star Wars. And more specifically today, we're going to talk about why I believe Star Wars is going to fail for the next 3 years, at least. Now, I'm going to preface this with saying that I actually do not want Star Wars to fail. I am a fan of Star Wars, but just looking at what's currently going on at Lucasfilm at Disney and looking at what we've got, I've kind of just came to this conclusion and looking at what they at least have proposed, what they're going to do for the future right now. I believe for at least the next 3 years, it is not looking good in Star Wars land. And so let me get into my explanations of why I believe that Star Wars is going to fail for the next couple years. And the very first reason is they literally don't have anywhere to go. And what I mean by that is literally all the projects that's been announced, and a lot of the films that has been announced is literally just to fill in gaps. After the failure of the last Disney trilogy, no one really cares about where those characters are going in the future, whether it's the major characters or like the side characters. Most of the fan base is not really interested in seeing where their story is going to take them. They're not really interested in seeing what villain lies on the horizon after Rise of Skywalker. So this puts Lucasfilm in a bind because they can't, because right now they can't really write any stories that takes place after Rise of Skywalker due to the lack of interest. So with them being only to write stories that fill in the gaps, it's going to get old eventually. I mean, look, we already have, we have already had Kenobi, we've had the Bad Batch, we have Rogue One. Rogue One is probably the best thing that Disney has put out, to be honest with you. Rogue One and I'll say Mandalorian season 1. Those are the best things Disney has put out. Everything else has been pretty mediocre. I guess you can count Clone Wars, the final season, if you want to count that. If you want to give Disney credit for that, I guess you could, because that was pretty good. But as you can see, literally every project that's announced still for the future is pretty much filling in gaps. You have like Skeleton Crew, Lando, Bad Batch season 2, Andor, Ahsoka. Probably another season of Mando. All those are basically just things just to fill in gaps, and eventually you're gonna run out of space. Now, of course, yeah, it spans decades, but eventually you're gonna run out of areas to cover. I mean, there's only so many times we can see the rebels, get together or start or finish the mission. There's only so many gaps to fill. Like I said, I think Rogue One was a pretty good entry, but it's gonna get pretty overkill pretty soon. Now, we'll say Disney or Lucasfilm, they did announce the Acolyte, which is, I guess, supposed to happen, years and years before the prequels. That it could potentially be interesting. It does not really filling in gaps. Really, it's more so going even further back in history. So that it could be interesting, but these past 2 or 3 Lucasfilm shows really haven't given me confidence. So I'm really looking to see what type of budget they put into it. Who's behind it for storytelling wise, and do they actually have a passion for like the Star Wars mythos in general, or are they in there just to change things? And to piggyback further off of that, they also had Star Wars Visions, and I believe they're supposed to do a Star Wars Visions 2. Now, I will say Star Wars Visions, it was pretty entertaining, see those animated episodes. And like I said, season 2, I'm sure there'll be even more creativity involved. But that's more so of a side project, side stories. And there's not really, to my knowledge, I'm pretty sure they're not canon at all to anything going on with the main Star Wars universe or Star Wars stories. So really, those are just fun things to watch. Just side things. They're seeing basically their Lucasfilm's version of What If, except these are not canon, obviously, but it is also animated. So those are just fun to watch, but nothing to do with the actual story of the main story of Star Wars. It doesn't move the story forward. It doesn't add anything to the current storyline whatsoever. But with that being said, it begs the question, for at least if this is going to be the status of Lucasfilm and Star Wars for at least the next 2 or 3 years, how long can you really carry a fan base or carry a storyline that literally cannot progress into the future, that can only fill in gaps or do side quests or side stories that are not canon to the main storyline? How long are fans really going to be entertained by that? And the next reason why I really believe that Star Wars is probably going to be in a state of failure for at least the next 3 years is the lack of movies. If you look at all their projects they got kind of already as greenlit or already started or filmed, it's all basically shows that's gonna be on Disney Plus. So they're not gonna be putting people in the movie theaters. Everyone's gonna be at home watching the shows. And the backbone of Star Wars is the movies. That's what started it all the way back in like 1977 when George Lucas released A New Hope. So the backbone of Star Wars is its films, from the very first trilogy to the prequel trilogy, and now we do have the sequel trilogy, but obviously it wasn't done by George Lucas. It was done by Disney and their various directors. But that is what made Star Wars part. That's what has made Star Wars part of the current culture and pop culture. So at this point, I really just feel like Lucasfilm is pretty kind of scared to release the film at this point due to the reception of the last film, the last trilogy in general, and most of the films they've put out, for the exception of Rogue One, has haven't had really great reviews. Now I will say Solo, it wasn't as bad as it was made out to be. It wasn't the greatest thing, but it wasn't as bad as people made out to be. But it was coming off a pretty bad film in the Star Wars mythos. So that's probably why it didn't do so great in theaters. But when Lucasfilm and Disney is looking at the bottom line when it comes to getting their budget back and making a profit, they are probably very hesitant to actually put out a movie at this point in time. And they also know that they really can't put out a movie or start another trilogy after The Rise of Skywalker, because they know there's a pretty good chance that they're not going to make their money back that they're going to put into it, because with the effects, the actors you got to pay, they're probably going to go in a hole trying to make a especially another trilogy. But with the movies, it's still a high chance that they're not going to make their money back on it. So they're very hesitant to put out another film. And even with the anthology series or anthology movies like you have Solo, I think there's even more hesitant to do that, because Patty Jenkins kind of came out and said that he shouldn't replace the OG actors with younger actors. But the problem was the actor wasn't a problem. The problem was just Disney in general and how they release films, and they really didn't have a good a consistent plan. That was a real problem. So it was a studio thing. It had nothing to do with the actual actors involved. So the people at Lucasfilm, they just seem to lack a lot of accountability when it comes to the failure of their projects, whether it be the shows or the movies. And then also they've kind of, drawn their line in the sand. They've even the Twitter accounts on social media has gone at fans just for, simply criticizing or giving their opinion on it. They feel like it's a fan issue, or the fans don't like something that they're doing, when it's really it's really what the content that they're putting out. So when you isolate, your core fan base, you already are, set for disaster, because they're the main ones who's carried the Star Wars universe from a fan point of view, for investing in it, giving the money to the merchandise, going to see the movies multiple times. But when you're literally isolating them and trying to appeal to people who are just fans on Twitter, it's not a recipe for a success. So I think they really need to, take the temperature of their fan base, realize where their fans are coming from, and kind of accept the criticism that they are receiving from fans who've been fans since before I was born, and take at least inventory of why they don't like the series. Now we'll say, you could say, hey, well, when the prequels came out, people didn't like those. Yeah, that's true. Like me personally, I did come up on the prequels and I did really love them, and I did when I finally saw their OG ones, I did like those as well. Now you could say, hey, these sequels are made for kids. You can make that argument, but in my opinion, I think they're just objectively not good whatsoever. Because I'm perfectly fine with saying I'm perfectly fine with saying I don't like a film, but I can see why another group would like it, or I can see potentially why it could be good. In this aspect, I think it's just all around the board and just not very entertaining. I'm not going to say that there was no good parts in the sequel trilogy. I was just have a hard time thinking of it is all. But when you're dealing with a franchise like Star Wars, you can't really have those big of blunders, especially in 2022, because back then when the prequels was getting, I guess, riddled by fans. Personally, everyone I talked to like it, but now we have social media, so people are a lot louder. Now, of course, the most extreme voices are going to be the loudest across social media, but I think there's a general consensus amongst many fans that it just wasn't as great or didn't live up to the storylines or movies that George Lucas originally was a part of. The ones he directed, and also I know he didn't direct every single one of them, but the ones he was directly involved in, at least. And speaking of directors, Lucasfilm, they have announced in the past that they did have some films coming out, which they really didn't. Well, I don't think all of them had a name. I don't think they even put it on the last little con they did where they announced the projects. I don't think any of these movies were on the list, which again is part of the problem because where are the movies? Star Wars is based on movies, but a couple of directors, they said Taika Waititi, his film was supposed to be the next Star Wars film. And then they also said Patty Jenkins was supposed to have a Star Wars film as well. I believe that one was going to be like Rogue Squadron or something like that. And then also I think Rian Johnson, he was also supposed to have his own trilogy that was supposed to come out. But all these projects have seemingly been kind of put on the back burner, or they're quote unquote supposed to be still in the script writing process, and it's supposed to come out in the next couple of years. Like even Taika Waititi's is supposed to come out at the end of December, but they just recently asked him about it, and it's almost like they're unsure if this movie is still going to happen. Which basically all three of those projects, it seems like they're unsure if it's still going to happen. But there's still a problem with all three of those directors. First, you have Taika Waititi, who just came off of Thor: Love and Thunder, and that movie was pretty horrible. I think generally the fans didn't like it. Now, of course, you got a lot of fans that did like it. I'm on the side. I really didn't think it was a great movie. I think Ragnarok was better. Now, I don't really like Ragnarok, but for different reasons, I do see why people do like Ragnarok. So I'm not gonna hate you for if you like Ragnarok. I'm just not a fan of it. I think Taika Waititi's, his style of directing, his comedy, it probably works better for his own type of projects. I just don't tend to like it when it comes to these established properties. I really don't like that style, so bring that to Star Wars, that could be problematic. But also, either way, his last film, I think, across the board, it just wasn't well received. And then you have Patty Jenkins, which her last film that I've watched at least was Wonder Woman, or her last big project at least was Wonder Woman 2. And let's be honest, that was pretty horrible. If I do say so myself, if you liked Wonder Woman, I wasn't a huge fan of Wonder Woman. There were some things in there that I wasn't particularly fond of. I am more of a DC fan, which you may already know by my videos, but I wasn't too fond of Wonder Woman. I won't say it was the worst thing I ever watched. Now, Wonder Woman 2, that was pretty bad. I ended up watching that on streaming. It was just pretty bad. Now, if you're one of the people that did like Wonder Woman 2, I definitely want you to comment and tell me why you like it. Let's talk about it. Then you have the last name, Rian Johnson. Somebody comment down below too if I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm gonna go with Ryan, even though it's spelled a little differently. But Rian Johnson, he directed The Last Jedi, which was the film that probably is the least well received. Well, I don't know. Rise of Skywalker, it was pretty badly received as well, but The Last Jedi, people were really kind of turned off by the decisions that were made in that film. So he's kind of not a best director you would want to have direct a whole Star Wars trilogy, because a lot of the core Star Wars fan base are just not a fan of his decision making when it comes to directing, and probably some of the actors on set were probably not a fan of the decisions he made, especially with Luke. So yeah, I doubt that trilogy will ever happen. So I think they kind of put in the excuse that he's working on Knives Out for Netflix, or not Netflix. He's working on Knives Out, but also working on some other Netflix properties. But I think right now Lucasfilm is just putting out a whole bunch of excuses of why no actual films are being made, or in at least some type of production, or started filming. Unless, I don't know, maybe Disney is telling them, hey, just focus on the shows right now. We'll do movies later, because you kind of create a big blunder with Rise of Skywalker. Maybe I'm not in the meeting rooms. That could be it too. But it does seem like not a lot is really happening right now, and they're just kind of telling us, hey, yes, it's still going to happen eventually, sometime 2023, maybe 2024. So we're in 2022 now, and if they announce that a movie is going to be made and the script is ready, I'm I don't think they have any actors or actresses already, cast. So you have to, yeah, think about it. You have to first of all finish the script. It has to be approved. You have to get the actors and actresses. You have to do, the pre-production stuff, getting ready, find locations, then the actual production, and then post-production. So I doubt even if they started doing all that right now, I don't think we would see anything for the rest of this year or next year as well. So all we're gonna get again is these shows that's gonna be coming on Disney Plus. And as we've seen with like Boba Fett and Kenobi, the Kenobi show, it seems like the budget for these shows is waning. I'm not sure why exactly, or at least they're not putting as much of the budget as they need to in it to make it look good. I mean, Andor, it does look good, but again, going back to the problem of eventually with all these different shows that's only filling in gaps is why should we actually care about these shows? What is it progressing? All thing is doing just giving more details to stories, overarching stories that we already know. So if they continue to go in the rut that they're currently in, it's not really looking good for the Star Wars franchise for at least the next at least the next 3 years, with the lackluster shows, the lack of passion that seems to be in the shows, the lack of films in general of the shows, and then you have the people behind the Star Wars, the actual creators and people that's over their social media attacking fans and dividing the fans and basically, drawing their line in the sand and not accepting any type of criticism or accountability. It's not looking very good, but I do hope that they do turn it around, but we'll see. But what are you listening to me for anyway? I'm a casual. Cue the outro.